Coming up on today's Locked On Dodgers, Freddie Freeman homers against his old team. Kenley Jansen returns to Dodger Stadium. Clayton Kershaw looked good until he didn't, just for a little bit. Cody Bellinger's turning some heads. We got a lot to talk about, so make sure to keep it Locked On Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yo, Dodger fans. Welcome to Locked On Dodgers. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the number one local sports daily podcast network. Locked On, your team every day. I want to thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day every day. And remember, you can find us simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. And to make it easier on yourself, just subscribe in those places and you'll never miss a day because you know we're not going to. If this is your first time listening or watching, I'm Vince Samperio of Reserving Fiends with my co-host Jeff Snider of Baseball Essential. We are both lifelong Dodger fans just like you, although we've also spent some time in the press box and locker room covering the Dodgers. While we're not quite insiders, we're still here to bring you the smart fans' perspective on our boys in blue. I'm Vince. I already told you guys who I am. Go ahead and subscribe, and let's talk some Dodgers.
I'm Jeff.
Yeah, that's Jeff. Like Freddie Freeman said, there's a lot of emotions running around, so maybe I'm caught up in that. The Dodgers won their seventh in a row, first one against the Braves. And after that 1-2 start, the Dodgers are now 8-2, first team, or not first team. Well, I guess first team in 8 wins, but best record. And then West, best record in baseball at the moment. Started 8-2 last year, started 8-2 this year. So it can only mean that there's at least 106 wins total coming. But let's start with the big news. Freddie Freeman, first game against the Braves, talked about all of his emotions before the game, talked about all of his emotions after the game. Hit a home run in his first at-bat against his former team. And, yeah, there's a lot to get into with Freddie Freeman, Jeff. So where do you want to start?
Yeah, first of all, Freddie's the nicest guy in the world. Like, you can tell, like, he's just a genuine guy. I really like Freddie Freeman. One of the things, I feel like we got a lot of information in that pregame press conference thing in the dugout with Freeman. He mentioned that he and Alex Anthopoulos had a 3-hour FaceTime call about a week after he signed with the Dodgers. You remember the day that the Dodgers held the press conference announcing the Freeman signing, somebody asked if he had seen Anthopoulos' tears or what he thought of Anthopoulos' tears. And Freddie just said, well, I saw him. And that's all I'll say about that. And so it seemed like there were some hard feelings at the time, but it seems like all that has been put behind him. We saw it was maybe a good thing that Ronald Acuna is not with the team. He's starting his rehab assignment today. And so probably a good thing since he's the only one who's had anything negative to say about Freeman. We saw a big hug between Freeman and Ozzie Albies, and Albies and Acuna are tight. But yeah, all in all, it was kind of a really cool thing for Freeman. He said after the game, the thing he would remember most was just going into the visiting locker room and seeing all those guys who he hadn't seen since their World Series parade. And, more stuff to kind of remind you that these guys are real people with real emotions.
Yeah, and I mean, he just kept touching on those emotions I think you said the word, just happy to see them, or those are my brothers, some kind of iteration of that a bunch of times. I think at one point he said that someone asked him, because, Freddie hugs were a thing in Atlanta. They asked him how many Freddie hugs. He said, probably like 25 Freddie hugs and 4 tears shed so far. So, he was over there. He said when he did see Anthopoulos in person, he took him down the stairs into more of the locker room or clubhouse because, he didn't want people to see those emotions that happened. So, I mean, for him to have all those emotions, and he said it in the pregame that, once the game starts, once you're in between those lines, then, he's just another guy trying to win a game. And we saw that right away when he homers in the first inning, first Dodger home run. He said after the game that Trey Turner messed with him and told him, it was cool of you to wait 9 games to hit your first one against the Braves. But all in all, he good for him. He already had his homecoming last week in terms of, playing in front of a bunch of friends and family in the home opener. Now he has this. He said he's got to kind of get it out of the way early on, just also because he wanted to see everybody on that side. And then he's just he'll get his ring in June. He said he saw somebody on the Brave side wearing their ring, and he told him to put his hand away because he wanted to see it in person the first time when he gets it in June. And you can still tell he's very proud of what the Braves did last year, and rightfully so. But like I said, once the game started, back to business, and the Dodgers did just that, putting up 7 runs again. The boomer bust offense, the offense that scores multiple runs in one inning, continued to do that, and he was part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it really, I don't know. It's kind of a cliche to say you couldn't have scripted it better, and because you could have. But one thing that I really, this is a cheesy dad moment for me. I didn't watch the beginning of the game because I was picking up my son and his friends from freshman baseball practice, and I ended up driving 5 boys besides my son home, and so it took about a half hour to get home. So we listened to the first inning or inning and a half on the radio. And when Freeman hit that home run, it happened to come right after we had just dropped off the last kid. So it was just me and my son in the car, sitting in the front seat. And Freeman hit that home run, and Charlie Steiner gave the call, and Duvall's going. Duvall has to run for it, whatever, and it's a home run. And my son and my son still actually giggles a little bit every time he sees Freeman in a Dodger uniform. He's so excited about Freddie Freeman being a Dodger, and the spontaneous. We high-fived each other while I'm driving, and just that cheesy dad moment of it reminded me one of the things that I love about baseball is bringing families together. And even though I was a little bit bummed that I didn't get to see Freeman's home run, obviously I watched it several times later, but that moment listening to it on the radio in the car with my son, it reminded me actually of the 2018 NLCS, the home run that JT hit off of Jeremy Jeffress to win game 2. My daughter and I were driving down to California for that. So we listened to that game on the radio, and that home run, just all that emotion and being there with my daughter, it reminded me of that. I don't know. It's just I think people listen to the show for my cheesy dad moments, but I love baseball because of the memories I make with my family,
Yeah, and speaking of cheesy dad moments, you saw a video of Charlie Freeman running up to Dansby Swanson. I'm sure he would have wanted Acuna to be there since Acuna was his favorite, Brave when he was there all those years. But yeah, just a lot going on, and speaking of those emotions, Kenley Jansen, part of it, coming back to Dodger Stadium for the first time. He was supposed to meet with the media around 4:30. He got pushed back a couple of times, and then we ended up not speaking to him till like 5:45. But either way, he was a good sport. He talked, mentioned, how hard it was to leave the Dodgers, but he felt it was something he wanted to do, and something for his career. He mentioned how he expected to get a warm welcome from the fans. They asked Dave Roberts how he would feel if they played his music coming in when he came in. Dave Roberts said he wouldn't have an issue with it. Kenley Jansen actually said that he wouldn't have wanted them to do that because, it's still the Dodgers' home, and he's a visitor now. So that kind of juxtaposition was pretty cool. But all in all, Kenley Jansen did not pitch because the Braves didn't have a lead, and he didn't have they didn't put him in. And he got a nice ovation from the crowd before the game. They played a little tribute video, and the Dodgers gave him a couple of mementos. Turner and guys were out there. So, for I guess a little anticlimactic because it's a relief pitcher that you don't want to see come into a game. But all in all, I feel like he got what he wanted, and he might still pitch the next 2 games of the series, but hopefully not.
Yeah, hopefully there won't be a save situation, but both teams do have the day off on Thursday, and so it seems likely that if the Dodgers, win, if they sweep this series, that Kenley would probably get to pitch on Wednesday anyway, as just kind of a, I assume Snicker would put him out there so the Dodger fans could give him his welcome or whatever, since they do have the day off the next day. But yeah, good to see Kenley, and yeah, it's weird seeing guys wearing what seems like the wrong uniforms,
Yeah, Dave Roberts mentioned that he does look better in a Dodgers uniform. So,
Everybody does.
yeah, that's what I was about to say.
Even I look good in Dodger blue,
Yeah, exactly. So that was all the emotional parts. I guess maybe Clayton Kershaw brings some emotions for Jeff, but not as emotional as the last game when he had a perfect game. But we're going to talk about Clayton Kershaw. We're going to talk about Cody Bellinger. But first, let's talk about BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for all your betting stats and sports info. Baseball season's underway. The basketball playoffs are underway. And for all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, head over to BetOnline because they're your continued source for all your sports wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. I mean, if you started putting some money down on the Dodgers and the over, like I mentioned, you might start winning yourself some money because the Dodgers have put up put up at least 5 runs in almost all their games in this win streak, at least 7 runs in a handful of those games. So go check out the Dodgers lines every day on betonline.net and learn more about all the other trends and actions going on. Bet Online, where the game starts. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day, every weekday morning that we're here for you. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Now podcast. You can also hear us on there as recaps from MLB games with analysis from our local experts, taking fans through the season like no other network. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts, and you'll probably hear Jeff on there sometimes since he handles most of our now. So check out the Locked On Now podcast, and let's talk about Clayton Kershaw, Jeff. He did not get through 9 perfect innings to start the season. He did give up a hit in that first inning, was cruising along the way, had a lot of swings and misses, and seemed to run out of gas / maybe facing the lineup the third time through. There in the 6th inning, ran into a little trouble. Ended up with the line of 4 runs allowed because Gratterall allowed a couple of his runners to come in. But all in all, up until that 6th inning, Kershaw was looking like he has all spring and looking like he did last week.
Yeah, he pitched a lot better than his final line shows. Even the fact that the Braves only had 2 runs when Kershaw left the game, and as is the case for Kershaw's entire career, it wasn't really Gratterall's fault. Gratterall comes in with second and third, and nobody out. It would have been great if he had only allowed one of those runs to score, but realistically, your goal there is to only let those 2 guys score, get your 3 outs, and get out of the inning, and that's what Gratterall did. But yeah, Kershaw threw 5 innings, had allowed 1 run. It was a great start. In a perfect world, maybe they pull him there. But there was no reason. They're going to have to find out at some point how built up he is. If anything, it did put to rest the idea that Kershaw could have gone 100 or 110 pitches 5 days ago, because he ran out of gas at about 85 in this game, which is kind of what we would expect. So it was a good game for Kershaw. And like Kershaw said after the game, luckily the offense scored a bunch of runs. And that, I talked about this on yesterday's episode, the benefit of having that boom inning early in the game, in the 4th inning again for the second game in a row, is that you can have a little bit of breathing room there. And so you can let Kershaw, try to get through that inning on his own, whatever. The Dodgers were able to, even though the final score is 7-4, Kimbrel gets a save. It was never really even that close. I mean, the Braves had the tying run on base, I guess, or the tying run on base against Gratterall at one point. But other than that, the game wasn't really that close. There was very few moments where we actually thought the Dodgers might lose this game, or it might be a close one. And so that's what you like from these big innings, and it lets them kind of work their way up to hopefully Kershaw can get built up, and by June and July he's peak Kershaw, and they can count on him for 7 or 8 innings. But getting 5 innings from Kershaw right now of quality innings, we'll take it.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, he's getting the swings and misses on the slider, which is good. He continued to keep his slider and fastball, differentiated by 4 or 5 miles an hour, which is what we talked about last time. Of a good thing. Threw a couple change-ups today, but nothing out of the ordinary. But like I said, 11 swings and misses, 8 of them on that slider, 7 strikeouts, all swinging. He's not, like we talked about last time, it's not smoke and mirrors. He's legitimately doing this, with that dominant slider and, by differentiating his pitches. And, all in all, it's good to see. He definitely, I mean, you look at his baseball savant page and it's all bright, dark red. He's in the 99 or 100 percentile, and, xERA, x batting average, x slugging, x WOBA, hard hit percentage, average exit velocity, strikeout percentage, whiff percentage. I mean, yeah, it's only 2 starts, but 2 starts against, 2 offenses that aren't, just complete pushovers, similar to kind of maybe the Reds offense, a little more pushover, but he didn't face them. He faced the Twins and he faced the Braves, and, all in all, good so far. It's continue what he did in the spring, and I'm excited to see what he can keep doing this year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Moving on to somebody else that has, well, like Bellinger had a bad spring, had a little bit rough start to the start of the season, but seems to be figuring things out. And I know you had a tweet kind of breaking down how Bellinger figures things out, and maybe a sign of good things to come, continue to come.
Yeah, we've seen this over the years. Bellinger has always been fluky, even his rookie year. He started off really slow, got that infield single for his first career hit in San Francisco, and then kind of took off and forced the Dodgers' hand. But he had some bad streaks during that season. Obviously, the postseason that year was terrible. 2018 he was worse. 2019 he was great the first month and a half of the season. People think he was bad the last half of the season, but he had like a 915 OPS or something in the second half of 2019. It was just bad compared to what he had been in the first half. But and then 2020 and 2021 have both struggled. But every time he's come out of these struggles, or I don't know about every time, but a pattern I've noticed over the years is that he'll start hitting the ball hard. First he stops striking out. When he's striking out a ton, obviously that's a problem. That's what we saw all spring training. Then he stops striking out as much, starts hitting the ball, and then he starts hitting the ball hard, but it's ground balls. And you start to see, oh, he's so close to figuring this out. And I actually had that thought with his two ground outs in his first two at bats of this game against the Braves, that the one, it was like 87 miles an hour, not a hard ground out, but like, okay, he's starting to get there. The next one was 96 miles an hour, hard ground out, scored a run. You're like, okay, he's close. He's just got to now start elevating. Well, the next one hits a line drive for a double. Next one, line drive over the wall. And that's kind of the pattern we've seen with Belly over the years. Is he kind of figures it out in stage, and it's probably common for a lot of players. I know Jock Peterson, when he's struggling, it's a lot of pop-ups and pulling ground outs, and it's more the launch angle than anything else is the problem. And launch angle for Belly always seems to be the last thing he figures out. But those last two hits, the double and the home run in this game, were 22 and 21 degrees launch angle, which is great, especially if you're hitting it over 100 miles an hour, which he did on both of those. The big difference between those two was the 21-degree launch angle was also hit 107 miles an hour, and that's enough to get over the wall and had that backspin. But Bellinger, so you mentioned he went 0 for 8 in the first two games of the season. Since then, he is 10 for 28, which is, what, 350-ish, somewhere around there. His OPS is over 1,000 since then. Overall, his OPS this season is now up to 866. Cody is having a good season so far, and it's still hit or miss. Joe Davis has mentioned a couple times, every game this season, Cody has had either 0 hits or 2 hits. Hasn't had a 1-hit game, hasn't had a 3-hit game. It's 0 or 2. But you know what? If you stack up enough of those twos, that'll do.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and we talked about, Bellinger a lot, obviously, and kind of what we expect from him. And, realistically at this point, if he can just be an adequate offensive player along with the Gold Glove defense in center field, that's still, borderline all-star with the hot streak to start the season, or a couple hot streaks to start the season. And that's, borderline all-star, which is obviously the Dodgers could ask for more, but at this point they don't need to ask for too much more. They already have, MVP candidates at the top of the lineup. They already have guys that are all-stars in the middle of and toward the bottom of the lineup. They don't need him necessarily to be that. Obviously, if he can, that's just a benefit. But it's also a matter, like you said, it's him, whatever it is, slowly figuring it out. And it is funny. You look at it, it's 0 for 4, 0 for 4, 2 for 3, 0 for 3, 2 for 4, 2 for 3, 0 for 4, 2 for 3, 0 for 4, 2 for 4. So, like you said, regardless of how that streak goes, you pick up a bunch of 2-hit games. It was a little bit misleading stat that they had after the game where he's had 5 multi-hit games already. He didn't get that until the end of July last season, but he was hurt, so that contributed to that. But he also has had 2 games with 2 extra base hits this season, which he didn't do, I don't think, or time what he did last year. So regardless of everything else, he's already on a better pace than he was last season, and hopefully he can just keep going and build that confidence. And if he can OPS around 800, that's more than plenty for the Dodgers.
Yeah. And both of those games that he had a double and a homer in were the two Kershaw starts. So apparently Cody Bellinger likes Clayton Kershaw and wants to help him out.
I think last game he said that he gets bored out there in center field when Kershaw starts. So maybe that's the key to unlocking Bellinger's power, is to keep him bored out there in center field.
Yeah, stop letting people hit the ball to center field so Cody feels like he needs to get in on the action.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so we're gonna talk about Blake Treinen. We're gonna talk about the non. Oh, funny that those two go back to back. The conspiracy that Dave Roberts is bringing up. But first, let's talk about Rock Auto, because this episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. And why choose to spend up to 100% more for the same parts from a chain store car dealership? You can go to Rock Auto and be treated the same as everybody else. You don't need to be a mechanic. You don't need to work at a car dealership, and you can save money. You're looking at a Honda Odyssey fuel pump in the chain stores. They are $353, $216 from Rock Auto. That's a big, big, big savings. Rock Auto prices are reliably low for every customer. You don't have to go into a store. You get it shipped directly to you. A lot of things that benefit you there from Rock Auto. Their website's easy to use. You don't have to worry about, walking around the aisles or asking somebody. You can just look for what you need right there on their website. So head over to rockauto.com, check it out. Know you're supporting a family business that's been serving people online for over 20 years. If you go to rockauto.com and check out all those parts available for your car truck, they might ask you, how did you hear about us? And when that box pops up, let them know that Locked On sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. All right, Jeff, let's start off with Blake Treinen, who hasn't pitched since the home opener on last week, Thursday, and there's a situation that seemed to lend itself to Blake Treinen last night. He didn't come in, and they asked Dave Roberts about it after the game. He said that Treinen's arm was, quote, barking in his last appearance, that he threw, felt a little bit better, but that he probably won't pitch this series, and which means he might not pitch till at least Friday. To me, it's interesting that I know the IL is different this year. It's 15 days compared to 10 days, but to me, it's interesting how you pull Kershaw out, 80 pitches when, he was seemingly cruising, but we understand that situation to where somebody's arm is barking and you don't just immediately put him on the IL this early in the season. But, he knows better than us, at least of maybe barking to me has a stronger connotation than it does to Dave Roberts.
Yeah, and some of it is probably just looking at the schedule and the current roster. You've got 16 pitchers on the roster, 10 true relief pitchers, and so it's they could especially with how well the starting pitchers have been pitching, they can probably get away with it. I thought it was interesting. Joe Davis actually told us about Treinen's barking arm during the game, and yet none of the beat reporters knew about it at that point, because several people were tweeting. I saw Juan Toribio and a couple other people. Fabian Ardaya tweeting, this is weird. This is a Treinen situation. I wonder why Treinen's not in the game. And so I don't know how Joe Davis had that information, but the beat reporters didn't. But yeah, Dave Roberts did clear it up after the game. And yeah, it makes sense with the day off on Thursday. If Roberts thinks it's not like they have anybody in the minor leagues who is ready to go. They already kind of have everybody. Andre Jackson is really the only Andre Jackson and Darian Nunez, I guess.
Technically, they send down Clevenger for Bickford.
That's true. So they could call Clevenger back up. And I think the injured list is only 10 days right now. Mm-hmm. I think until that May 1st thing, I think that was one of the caveats of that. So they could, but if they really do think it's only going to be a few days or whatever, and they're doing fine, I was happy to see Bickford in that situation, because that is a situation that we're going to see Bickford in this year. And, the Dodgers spent all spring telling us Blake Treinen is not going to be defined by an inning. And so, yeah, in a way, that eighth inning did seem like it would have been his. Really, the seventh inning was the more surprising one, because the eighth inning was a little bit farther down the lineup. But the seventh inning where Daniel Hudson pitched seemed to me more like the kind of inning that Treinen would pitch. But I love seeing the Bickford out there. It was kind of a really good easing in opportunity for Bickford, because it was high leverage. It was the eighth inning, but also it is, closer to the bottom of the lineup, and, not a super tight game. It was a 2-run game at that point. So all in all, it was kind of a good happy medium to get Bickford out there, and he looked great. He gave up he's the one who gave up the infield single to d'Arnaud, right? Yeah, so he gives up a hit to d'Arnaud that went 4 feet. You probably didn't see the StatCast that popped up on the screen since you were at the game. It was a 55 mile an hour exit velocity, negative 71 degree launch angle, estimated distance 4 feet. And that turns into a base hit for Travis d'Arnaud once in a while. But other than, I mean, Bickford looked great. And so I was happy, obviously not happy that Treinen's hurt, and hopefully not too concerned. If anything, the fact that they are not rushing to put him on the IL seems like it probably really is a very precautionary move on their part. But I was really happy to see Bickford out there and looking good, because he looked really good. He was maybe even throwing harder than I remember, because I think he was hitting 94 tonight. And I think of Bickford as more of a 92, 93 kind of guy most of the time.
Yeah, he would top out around 94, 95, I believe, last year. So that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, in terms of it, now that with, the COVID restrictions kind of going away, Joe Davis will have more of that information this year. That's just, another note on that, because he can go down there. I've seen him on the field the two times I've been there covering the game. He's been down on the field talking to guys around the batting cage, talking to Dave Roberts, talking to the coaches. So, he will have some of that information. And then in the press box, they don't have the broadcast running. So someone would have to be listening to it. So in that sense, but either way, like I said, I think that was perfect for Bickford. I think realistically, kind of from what we've seen, Bickford, Gratterall are kind of interchangeable in their roles. So if Bickford had been already on the roster and been ready to go, he might have got that inning coming in after Kershaw, and then Gratterall would have probably got the 7th or 8th inning. But regardless, between Hudson, Gratterall, Bickford, and Treinen, that's 4 guys that can kind of handle and diffuse situations that they trust. Obviously, Treinen being down for a couple of days, they'll still be able to figure it out. So, but let's move on to some offensive things. Dave Roberts mentioned that he's not a conspiracy theorist, but that he was confounded and confused by, or he said something's different. Gavin Lux hit a ball today that looked like it was going to clear the center field wall pretty easily, and then it didn't end up clearing the wall. And then there was a tweet going around about MLB home run rates. Starting from 2018, home run rates by year, 4.5%. 2019, 5.5%, 2020, 5.2%, 2021, 5%, and this year down to 4.3%. The guy that posted it, Derek Carty, he seems to be smart at numbers. He says that we're at the point where this data should be pretty stable, and it's adjusted for weather, park, player quality, and universal DH. There's been a couple of balls hit so far at Dodger Stadium that looked like they were going to be gone, not just from the Dodgers, but from other teams as well. I had been attributing it to the marine layer because it has been a little bit cooler at the stadium, but maybe the balls are a little bit different, or something's a little bit different.
Yeah, and the ultimate fact is that Major League Baseball has lost all its credibility when it comes to the baseball and the integrity of the baseball. The fact that it's changed 4 times in the last 5 years and we never knew about it ahead of time. Of course, we're all going to jump to the conspiracy theory because unfortunately, when it comes to Rob Manfred, a lot of times conspiracy theories are true. And so, the ball is probably different. Lux hit that ball 103.4 miles an hour at a 28-degree launch angle, which is an expected batting average of 860, meaning 86% of the time a ball hit with that launch angle and exit velocity is a hit. And I would guess that the vast majority of those 86% are home runs, because that's a home run. That is home run, exit velocity, and launch angle. And, obviously that you can hit it hard, but if you get a little bit on top of it or don't quite get the backspin, it's not going to travel as far. But, at those numbers, you expect to see a home run. And we didn't tonight. And Gavin Lux has had, he had one last year that should have been a home run and wasn't. There's been, we have too many in the last 5 years, going back to Cody Bellinger in Game 2 of the 2017 World Series. And Will Smith, when was Will Smith's?
2019. Game 5.
Oh, that game. I forgot that game existed. Yeah. So there's been too much of this garbage. And the good thing is, and I meant to pull this up, but the Dodgers have had a ton of big innings this year, and there have been very few home runs involved in any of those innings. And so either the home runs are going to start coming or they're not, but either way, the Dodgers offense is going to be okay because they can hit. hopefully some of these balls will start hitting into home runs, especially as the weather warms up and whatever else happens, and Major League Baseball secretly changes the balls again and whatever else they're going to do. But the Dodgers are going to score runs either way, and so it's not a huge deal. But yeah, I'd like to see Gavin Lux when he hits a home run. I'd like to see the ball go over the wall, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I was talking to a Reds fan that I know, and he was saying, yeah, we have no chance if the balls are not juiced, or if it's cooler at our stadium, the ball's not flying, because they're kind of built for the home run, or at least that's what he said. He would know better than I would, because I'm not a Reds fan. But the Dodgers, like I said, not built for the home run. They're able to sustain this offense, and eventually the home runs are going to start coming out. Like I said, as things heat up, and they're not at Dodger Stadium all the time. So we'll see what happens. But either way, like I said, Dodgers offense is doing well, and they will continue to do well, you would imagine. We got a good matchup tomorrow with Max Fried and Walker Buehler, so there might not be too much offense early on, but maybe the Dodgers can get to Max Fried. They've gotten to him before in other times. But before we head out, Jeff, is there anything else you want to add?
I just have one last thing. Former Dodgers minor league coach Mark Kurtenian. He's been a guest on the show. He is one of the nicest guys you will ever meet. And I just read this morning that he is battling a rare neurological condition. He had to travel to the UK for treatment that is not available in the United States and is not covered by his insurance. And the life of a minor league coach is not a particularly affluent one. And so there is a GoFundMe for him. We'll put the link to the GoFundMe in the description of this show on the podcast app and on YouTube, so you can go check it out. Mark is a couple of years ago in 2019 when he was managing the Ranch Cucamonga Quakes. I was down there with my sons, and I told Mark we were coming. He's, "Oh, have your sons come down onto the field." So my sons got to go hang out on the field during batting practice, in the dugout before the game, getting autographs. And just, Mark was just the nicest guy. Just made, he's there to manage a baseball game, but he made sure that my sons had the time of their life that game. They still talk about that game. Just a great, great dude. He was a Dodger fan growing up before he was a Dodgers coach. I actually first met him before he was a Dodgers coach. He bought some of my tickets to go to a Dodger game. He's went to high school with the guy who used to have season tickets right in front of my seats, coincidentally. But such a nice guy, such a good guy. And so keep him in your thoughts and prayers. And if you have the means to donate a little bit on his GoFundMe, that would be great too.
Yeah, definitely was one of our favorite guests. That's not a player, had a lot to say. So hopefully everybody can, or hopefully he can get better, and everyone can contribute if they can. But that's gonna do it for today's episode. Thank you all for listening. We will be back tomorrow to talk about the Dodgers against the Braves. Keep an eye on Mookie Betts. We might talk about him if he doesn't have a great 4-for-5 breakout performance or something like that.
You hear that, Mookie?
Yeah,
that's a threat.
Yeah, Mookie, let's get it going. If you need someone else to listen to, check out Locked On MLB with Paul Francis Sullivan, aka Sully. He brings his unique perspective on the major leagues past and present. You can find us on YouTube by searching Locked On Dodgers, wherever you get podcasts by searching Locked On Dodgers, on Instagram and Twitter by looking up Locked On Dodgers. You can find Jeff on Twitter at Snydog, and I'm at Vince Samperio. DMs are open on all those accounts if you need to get a hold of us or reach out to us for whatever reason, questions, comments, concerns. Other places you can direct questions, comments, concerns is email lockedondodgers@gmail.com and voicemail text 323-863-5625. We're here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be with us when you get in your car or if you're at home. Tell your smart device, play podcast Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. Have a good one.
We'll talk to you tomorrow.